Marcus Johnson stepped off the city bus just as the afternoon sun warmed the pavement. He paused to straighten his coat and check the time on his wristwatch. The watch was old, with a worn leather strap and a round face that had seen better days. Yet it meant more to Marcus than any new model could. It was a gift from Governor Ellis, given to him a few weeks ago at a small gathering at the State House. The governor had thanked Marcus for his years of work helping young people in the neighborhood, and he had pressed the watch into Marcus's hand, smiling as he said, "Wear this with pride." Marcus felt a quiet pride every time he looked at that watch. It reminded him that someone at the highest level of government had noticed his efforts. Over the years, he had run after-school programs, mentored teens, and organized neighborhood cleanups. He knew the streets could be rough, and opportunities could be few, but he believed in small steps, steady progress, and open hearts. The watch was more than metal and glass. It was proof that kindness and hard work could lead to respect, and respect could lead to change. He crossed the street toward the old brick church where the charity event would be held. On the bulletin board outside, a flyer announced Community Helpers Gala. Together we rise. Inside, chairs and tables were set up in neat rows, with white tablecloths and simple centerpieces of wildflowers in mason jars. Volunteers buzzed around, placing plates and checking lists. Everyone seemed friendly, but Marcus noticed the way some people watched him. He knew what they were thinking. A black man dressed for a formal event wearing a watch that probably cost more than many of their cars. He stepped in with a warm greeting. "Good afternoon," he said to the greeter, a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. "Marcus Johnson." She checked her list, smiled, and offered him a name tag. He pinned it to his coat, stood tall, and made his way to the front, where podium waited. The room quieted as the governor entered. Governor Ellis was in his late 50s, tall and thin, with silver hair and a gentle voice. He wore a dark suit and a striped tie, and he moved with calm confidence. Marcus watched him for a moment, then approached to shake his hand. The governor's grip was firm and warm. "Marcus," the governor said, nodding, "thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy today." "I'm happy to be here," Marcus replied. "And thank you again for the watch." He glanced down and touched the strap. The governor winked. "It suits you. Let everyone know that hard work pays off." Marcus took a seat near the front. He looked around at the familiar faces. Organizers from other community groups, school, principals, a few local business owners. They chatted in small clusters, some sharing stories about their own youth work, others discussing budgets and schedules. Marcus felt at home, but he also felt a quiet tension in the air. The city council had cut funds for many programs this year, and people were worried soon. The governor tapped the microphone and called the meeting to order. He spoke about the need to stand together, to look out for one another, and to lift up those who had been left behind. His words echoed in the high ceiling and polished wood of the church hall. Marcus listened, nodding at points, feeling the familiar swell of determination in his chest. He knew speeches could only go so far. What mattered was action afterward. After the speech, volunteers lined up to serve coffee and sandwiches. Marcus joined the line, chatting with a teacher named Rosa who ran a program for girls interested in science. She asked him about his latest project, the weekend art class he had started. He explained how they met in the community center, painted murals, and learned about local history. Rosa smiled. "You really make a difference," she said. Marcus shook his head. "I'm just doing my part." He sipped his coffee and watched as people mingled. A few older gentlemen from a local veterans group gathered near a window, comparing stories about service days long past. Marcus's own program passed by with their parents, excited to show off their art on display boards. One of them, a tall boy named Jamal, waved and came over. "Mr. Johnson?" Jamal called. He stepped forward, grinning. "Look, I painted this for you." He pointed to a bright design of a sunrise and hands reaching up. Marcus knelt down to Jamal's level and studied the painting. "This is beautiful," he said. "You've captured hope in every brushstroke," Jamal beamed. "Thank you. I wanted you to have something to remember us by." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. Moments like this made every long night, every fundraiser, every struggle worthwhile. He patted Jamal's shoulder and said, "I'll wear it right here," tapping his watch. Jamal laughed. "That's the best spot." Soon it was time for the governor's Q&A. People lined up to ask questions about funding, neighborhood safety, and education. The governor answered patiently, promising to look into each issue. Afterward, he made his way toward Marcus again. "Marcus," he said, stopping beside him. "I hear your program is thriving." "It's growing," Marcus replied. "But we need more space and more supplies." He handed the governor a brief proposal. The governor glanced at it, then looked up with a smile. "I'll see what I can do. You keep me posted?" Marcus left the church hall with a full heart. He felt honored, hopeful, and a little tired from the day's excitement. He walked back to the street, holding his paperwork and sipping the last of his coffee. The sun had begun to lower in the sky, casting a golden light on the sidewalks. He paused at a corner store to buy a bottle of water. Inside, the clerk greeted him with a nod, but kept her distance. It reminded him of the walls that still stood. Between people, he paid and stepped out, tucking the water into his bag. As he walked toward his car, he thought about the watch again. It was safe now, shining faintly in the afternoon light. It was a symbol of trust and respect. But he also knew that not everyone around him would see it that way. Some might assume it was stolen or bought by someone who did not earn it. He had no doubt that if the wrong person saw it, they might try to take it away. Still, he was not afraid. He had learned many lessons in his life: to stand tall, to speak calmly, and to know his rights. He reached his car, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The city hummed around him as he pulled onto the road. He headed home, unaware that this simple watch would soon test everything he believed in. Marcus drove away from the church hall with a light heart. The day had gone well, and he felt proud of the progress in his community. The sun had dipped lower, leaving a soft glow on the road as he navigated through familiar streets. Drifted to the art display, to the governor's promise, and to the volunteers who would keep working long after he went home. In his rearview mirror, taillights stretched into the distance. Inside the car, he reached up and glanced at the watch. On his wrist, its face catching the last rays of sunlight. He felt safe, almost at peace. He turned onto Elm Avenue, a quiet street lined with old oak trees. The branches formed a gentle tunnel overhead, and the breeze rustled through the leaves. Marcus rolled down his window to let in the cool air. Enjoyed nights like this when the city quieted and he could think. The steering wheel felt familiar in his hands. He hummed a soft tune, a song from his childhood, and nodded along to the rhythm. The next intersection showed a green light, and he eased the car forward. Ready to head home and rest after a long day, suddenly, flashing blue and red lights appeared in the corner of his vision. At first, Marcus thought they might belong to an ambulance or a fire truck. But then he saw the police cruiser pulling up behind him, its sirens silent, but its lights urgent. He felt a flicker of surprise. He wasn't speeding. He hadn't run a stop sign. He didn't know why he was being stopped. Took a deep breath, reminded himself to stay calm. He flicked on his turn signal and steered the car to the side of the road, pulling over under a street lamp. He parked close to the curb and turned off the engine. Marcus unfastened his seatbelt and placed his hands on the steering wheel, where the officer could see them. His heart thumped, but he kept his expression steady. Through the windshield, he watched as two officers stepped out of their cruiser. The first wore a neatly pressed uniform and polished boots. His name tag, Reed Davis. The second, slightly shorter, with a squad patch on his sleeve, stood by the passenger door. Marcus felt the weight of their gaze like cold eyes measuring him. Officer Davis approached the driver's side and tapped on the window with gloved fingers. Marcus rolled it down. "Good evening, sir," Davis said, his voice clipped. "And registration, please?" Marcus nodded and reached into the glove compartment. He pulled out his wallet, removed his driver's license, and handed it to the officer. He also handed over the car registration and proof of insurance. "Is there a problem, officer?" Marcus asked quietly. Davis studied the papers under the street lamp's glow, frowned slightly. then looked back at Marcus. "You were swerving in your lane back there," he said.
Out.
Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry, officer. I must have misjudged the turn. It's been a long day." He leaned forward. "I'll be more careful." Davis turned away to speak to Officer Reed, who stood with his arms folded. A moment later, Davis stepped closer again, his eyes flickering down to Marcus's wrist. The watch caught the light and gleamed. Davis's posture shifted. He cleared his throat and said, "That's a fancy watch. You know, this neighborhood isn't exactly high-end. What's a guy like you doing wearing something like that?" Felt a tight knot in his chest. He recognized the tone, disbelief mixed with resentment. "It's a gift," Marcus said. "From Governor Ellis?" She tapped the watch. "He gave it to me tonight to thank me for my community work." Davis's lips pressed into a thin line. He raised his voice slightly. "You expect me to believe that? Sounds like a phony story." Marcus kept his voice calm. "I have a note from his office if you need to check. I can show you the invitation, too." Officer Reed chuckled softly behind Davis. Davis shot him a look, but turned back to Marcus. "I'm going to need you to take off the watch so I can inspect it. If it's real, fine. If it's stolen, you'll hand it over right now." His hand hovered near his belt, where his flashlight and radio rested. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He knew his rights. He also knew that refusing could make things worse. "I'm sorry, officer, but I can't do that," Marcus replied, keeping his tone even. "This watch belongs to me. I'm not taking it off." Davis's eyes narrowed. "They're obstructing an investigation. Step out of the car." Marcus hesitated. He looked around, saw no help in sight. He unclasped his seatbelt slowly and opened the door. He placed his hands on the roof of the car, where they could be seen. Officer Davis circled. To stand behind Marcus now, he pressed the tip of his flashlight against the watch's face. "I'm going to remove it myself," he said. His voice was colder, heavier. Marcus took a steadying breath. "Please don't touch my property," he said. "I have done nothing wrong." Reed moved forward to help, his face expressionless. The two officers reached for the watch at the same time. Marcus felt one of them grip his wrist. He jerked back slightly. "Let go," he said. Davis's hand tightened around Marcus's. "Arms, stop resisting us," he shouted. Reed grabbed Marcus's other arm. Marcus pushed back, startled by the rough handling. He kept his words simple. "Please, don't hurt me. I'm telling you it belongs to me." Davis's jaw clenched and he pulled out his radio. "Suspect is resisting," he said into the mic. "We need backup." Confusion swirled in Marcus's mind. He watched as a second cruiser's lights appeared around the corner. He realized the officers were making a serious mistake, one that could cost him everything: his freedom, his reputation, his safety. He tried to stay calm, but fear pressed in on him. The watch on his wrists, once a symbol of pride, felt like a target painted bright for them to take. Within minutes, Davis snapped on handcuffs, tight enough to hurt but not enough to break skin. "You're under arrest for resisting law enforcement," he said, his voice unyielding. Marcus lifted his hands, wincing at the pressure. "Resisting what?" he asked. "You never told me the real reason for this stop?" Davis shoved him lightly toward the patrol car. "You got your chance. Now get in." Marcus climbed into the back seat, the metal bench cold beneath him. "Dot." He sat with his hands cuffed behind his back, looking at the dark sky through the barred windows. His heart pounded, but his mind raced with questions. How could they be so blind to who he was? How could they treat him like a criminal when he was only defending himself? He glanced down at the watch one last time before it slipped out of view, hidden by the seat. He thought of Governor Ellis, of Jamal's painting, of every moment that had led him here. As the cruiser's engine roared to life, Marcus realized that the night had changed. The hope he carried was now tangled with worry. He hoped someone would hear the truth soon. He hoped someone would stand up for him, and he knew he would not stay silent. But for now, he sat in the back seat, cuffed and uncertain, watching the city lights blur past. The watch was gone from his sight, and with it, the simple peace he had felt just moments before. Marcus felt the hard seat under him as the patrol car pulled into the station's parking lot. The bright lights inside the station hurt his eyes when the officers opened the door and guided him out. He kept his hands cuffed behind his back and his head down, trying to steady his breathing. He heard their boots echo on the tile floor as they walked him inside. They led him past a row of chairs where people waited for their turn. Some glanced at him with curiosity. Others stared blankly ahead. Marcus wondered what they thought. Felt the weight of the handcuffs and the sting of shame. He had done nothing wrong. He only wanted to protect his watch. An officer at the intake desk looked up as Marcus and the two who arrested him arrived. She motioned for Davis and Reed to hand over his paperwork. Davis shoved a small stack of forms across the desk. The intake officer scanned the papers, tapping keys on her computer. She asked Marcus to state his name, date of birth, and address. Marcus spoke clearly. His voice sounded strange in the empty room. Next, the officer asked him to step forward for a search. Marcus lifted his arms, and she patted his coat, his pockets, and his belt. She found his wallet, his keys, and his phone. Marcus watched as she placed each item in a clear plastic bag and sealed it. She handed the bags back to the arresting officers. He realized the watch was not on his wrist. He raised his eyes to Davis. "Where's my watch?" Marcus asked softly. The intake officer frowned. She looked at Davis. Reed shrugged and said, "It's evidence." The intake officer typed something and handed Marcus a slip of paper. "Here's your booking number," she said. "You'll keep this. You can get your belongings back when you're released." She pushed the paper toward him. "Wait over there." She pointed to a bench against the wall. Marcus nodded and walked over slowly. He sat down, folded his hands over his knees, and stared at the floor. His heart felt heavy. He could not believe those officers had taken his watch, his gift from the governor, and called it evidence. He had no idea how long he would stay here, or what would happen to that watch. After a while, a young desk sergeant called his booking number. He led Marcus to a small room and asked him to face a camera. The sergeant snapped photos and noted his height and weight. Someone else took his fingerprints. Marcus felt the scanners, cold glass against his fingers. He closed his eyes briefly, remembering the watch's smooth metal back and how Governor Ellis had pressed it into his hand. Once the photos and prints were done, Marcus was led to a holding cell. The sergeant unlocked the door and motioned him inside. The cell was small, with a metal bench, a toilet, and gray walls. A single bulb flickered overhead. Another man sat on the bench, head bowed, his back to Marcus. Marcus cleared his throat. "Is this seat taken?" The man looked up, then slid over. He was middle-aged, with tired eyes and scruffy hair. He nodded without speaking. Marcus sat down, resting his cuffed hands in his lap. The other man turned his head. "You here for a long stay?" he asked in a low voice. Marcus shook his head. "I was stopped for a traffic thing. Then they accused me of resisting." Man snorted. "That's common. They'll toss any charge at you if they want to hold you longer." Marcus swallowed. "He took my watch, too." He felt a tight knot in his throat. "It belongs to me. It was a gift." The man shrugged. "Watches are easy to take. You ever see the video on those precinct cops trading stuff in the locker?" Marcus shook his head. "I'm not sure what you mean." The man shifted. "You'll find out. Maybe someone will pay attention." Marcus stared at the man's face but did not reply. He looked around the cell again. The air smelled stale. He heard voices through the walls, other detainees arguing, keys jingling, distant footsteps. He tried to keep calm, to breathe steadily. Worry clawed at him. He thought of his mother, his friends, his program at the community center. He wondered if anyone would know he was here. Hours passed. The cell door clicked open, and a guard led Marcus out for a short walk. Then he brought him back and fed him a sandwich and some water. Marcus ate slowly, careful not to swallow too fast. He had no appetite, but he forced himself to eat enough. He had to stay strong. You're back in the cell. He sat on the bench and thought about the watch. Where did they put it? How would he get it back? He thought of Governor Ellis's office. And the aides who managed his schedule knew the governor trusted him. He had to hope they would believe him. He held on to that hope like a lifeline. Meanwhile, in the governor's mansion, Sarah Jenkins was in the gift room. She was the governor's senior aide, responsible for all items given and returned. That evening, she stepped into the quiet, paneled chamber to update the gift log. She opened a glass case filled with watches the governor had received over the years. At the bottom shelf, she expected to see Marcus's watch displayed in a velvet box, but the box was empty. Sarah's heart sank. She checked her notes. She remembered clearly handing the watch to Marcus just hours ago. She recalled the governor's warm smile as he said, "Wear this with pride." She pulled out her phone and dialed security. "Chief Watson, I need you to check something for me," she said. "The watch I signed out tonight is missing from the display case." She gave details about the watch's make, its unique engraving inside the back, and the time it was delivered. "Understood," Watson replied. "I'll have my team review the video footage right away." Sarah hung up and hurried to the governor's office. She found Governor Ellis reviewing some papers. He looked up when she entered. "Sarah, what is it?" he asked. Sarah held up her tablet. "Sir, the watch you gave to Marcus is gone from the gift room. Security's checking the footage." The governor's face paled. He rubbed his forehead. "That watch was special. He deserved it." "I know," Sarah said gently. "We'll find out what happened." She tapped on her tablet. "Here's a timestamp from 6:30 this evening. I'm pulling the video now." In the station's security office, Chief Watson and two officers huddled around monitors. They fast-forwarded through footage from gift room cameras. They saw the governor sign the log at 6:15 p.m. 10 minutes later, the governor left. The case remained closed for another hour. Then, at 8 p.m., two uniformed officers entered. They wore badges that read Davis and Reed. They approached the case, looking up and down the hall. Davis tapped open the glass door and red-handed him something. Watson zoomed in on the image. It was the watch. Watson rewound and watched again. He saw Davis slip the watch into his pocket. Reed locked the case with a strange smile. They left without logging anything. Watson's jaw tightened. I grabbed a notepad and jotted down notes. Minutes later, Sarah received a call. "I have a recorded incident," Watson said. "Officers Davis and Reed took the watch without authorization." Sarah closed her eyes. "We need to act quickly. You know where they might have taken it?" Watson checked the station's registry. They filed something as evidence at 8:15. It's under unknown owner. No further details. Sarah's voice was firm. "We need to inform the governor, then launch an inquiry, and we need to locate Marcus Johnson." He was supposed to attend a later meeting but never arrived. Back in the holding cell, Marcus heard footsteps again. A guard unlocked the door and motioned him out. Marcus followed, hoping it was to get his watch back or to speak to someone in the governor's office. Instead, they led him to a small interview room. A lieutenant sat at a table with his arms crossed. He glanced at a folder. "Mr. Johnson," he said, "you're still in custody, but we have some questions about this watch." Marcus's heart pounded. He straightened and looked into the lieutenant's eyes. "It belongs to me," he said. "Governor Ellis gave it to me tonight." The lieutenant raised an eyebrow. He opened the folder and slid a photo across the table. Showed the watch in its case. "These officers turned in this item as evidence," he said. "They say it was taken from you." Marcus picked up the photo and nodded. "That's the watch, but they had no right." He met the lieutenant's gaze. "Someone needs to see the video from the governor's office. They'll see what happened." Lieutenant closed the folder and leaned back. He nodded slowly. "We'll review all footage. We'll sort this out." He stood. "We'll be in touch." As the door closed behind him, Marcus felt a small spark of hope. Someone was listening. Someone would check the facts. The evening had been long and frightening. But now his fight for justice was beginning. He would not let his watchword, his dignity, be taken without a fight. Marcus sat alone in the small interview room, the walls bare and the light soft. He stared at the table, resting his hands on its smooth surface. Minutes earlier, a lieutenant had promised to review every piece of footage and speak with everyone involved. Now, there was nothing for Marcus to do but wait. His heart felt tight, but he remembered the lieutenant's words, "You will be heard." Down the hall, Lieutenant Garcia stepped into a secure data room. A large screen filled one wall, showing rows of video feeds. He tapped a few keys and a timeline of clips appeared. He selected the feed from the governor's gift room. The blue timestamp read the 10th of June, 2025. 1815 to 2015. He rewound until he saw Governor Ellis place the watch in Marcus's hand. Then he jumped ahead to 8 o'clock when 2 officers entered. The figures moved carefully. Davis lifted the glass case, Reed handed him the watch, and Davis slipped it into his pocket. Reed closed the case, and they left. Garcia nodded. He knew this evidence would change everything. At the same time, Sarah Jenkins sat beside Governor Ellis in his office. The governor's brow was heavy with worry. Sarah tapped her tablet, showing him the same video. "Here," she said softly. "This is Lieutenant Garcia's copy." The governor leaned forward, watching Davis and Reed's faces. He felt a mix of anger and disbelief. They had taken his gift from Marcus. They had done it after arresting a man who had done nothing wrong. "I want them placed on leave," the governor said firmly. "And I want a full inquiry into the precinct." He rubbed his temples. "Marcus must be released immediately once his name is cleared." Sarah nodded and tapped another command. "I've already alerted Internal Affairs. They're on their way here." Lieutenant Garcia called his superior at Internal Affairs. "We have clear footage," he said. "These officers stole property and filed it as evidence." "Is Marcus Johnson a community leader? We need to move fast." Within minutes, 2 uniformed IA investigators arrived at the station. They showed their badges, shook hands with Garcia, and gathered around the screen. They watched in silence, then took notes. One investigator, Agent Porter, spoke up. "We need to secure the evidence locker logs," he said. "Find out who signed it in, at what time, and what paperwork they used." Garcia tapped a key. List appeared. Evidence item number 1257. Unknown owner watch. Logged 2015 Davis. No further description. Agent Porter frowned. "No description? Nothing about make or model? No serial number?" Garcia shook his head. "Just watch, Porter." Scribbled in his notebook. "We'll need to interview both officers under oath, and we'll need to take custody of that watch." He stood and gathered his team. "Let's move." They left in a crisp, determined stride. Back in the interview room, the door opened. Lieutenant Garcia invited Marcus in. "We have new information," he said kindly. "Internal Affairs has secured the video from the governor's office. That video clearly shows your watch was stolen by Davis and Reed. They took it from the gift case. We also have evidence they filed it under unknown owner." Marcus felt relief wash over him. He closed his eyes and let out a breath. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for believing me." Garcia nodded. "We still have to follow procedure, but we expect you'll be released soon, and the watch will be returned to you, or 2. The governor's office for proper delivery will also file charges of theft and misconduct." Marcus's hands trembled. He touched his wrist where the watch had been. "I just want my watch," he said. "I don't want to clear my name." Garcia smiled. "You will, I promise." News of the investigation began to ripple outward. A reporter at the state capitol heard a rumor that 2 officers had stolen from the governor's office. She called the governor's press secretary, who confirmed that the watch was missing and that an inquiry was underway. By dawn, the story was on morning news. Headlines blared. "Governor's watch stolen by police and black community leader wrongfully arrested." Social media lit up with outrage. Many users shared the governor's speech about unity and justice from the night before, contrasting it with the actions of his own officers. That afternoon, Governor Ellis held an impromptu press conference outside the State House. A row of microphones pointed toward him as dozens of cameras rolled. He spoke with a firm yet calm voice. Yesterday, I honored Marcus Johnson for his tireless work in our community. Tonight, I learned that 2 officers stole that honor by taking the watch from him and arresting him wrongly. This behavior is unacceptable. No one is above the laws, especially those who enforce it. I have placed Officers Davis and Red on administrative leave, effective immediately. Internal Affairs will conduct a full investigation. I've also spoken with Marcus Johnson and offered my personal apology. Reporters shouted questions. Will you support criminal charges against the officers? How will you prevent this from happening again? The governor answered them in turn. Yes, the officers will face the consequences of their actions. And I will work with lawmakers to strengthen oversight of our law enforcement agencies. With that, he stepped back, his expression resolute. Meanwhile, at the precinct, a mood of shock and tension ruled the day shift. Officers whispered in corners, glancing at the locked evidence room where the watch remained in a secure box. Some insisted Davis and Reed had acted without thinking. Others feared the scandal would damage the department's reputation. The precinct captain posted a notice. All media inquiries should be directed to Internal Affairs. No statements. From this station. That evening, Marcus received a call from Lieutenant Garcia. Your release paperwork is ready, Garcia said. You'll be free to go within the hour. Marcus closed his eyes and nodded, though Garcia could not see him. Thank you, he said. I appreciate everything you've done, Garcia replied. Just doing my job. I'll see you in the lobby. Marcus walked out of the station. His hands finally free of the metal cuffs, he felt a mixed weight of exhaustion, relief, and pride. A small group of reporters waited outside. They asked for his comments. He paused, adjusted his shirt, and lifted his chin. Thank you to those who stood by me and checked the facts, he said. In times like these, truth matters. I'm grateful to Governor Ellis and to the investigators who did the right thing. Now it's time to keep working for justice for me and for our entire community. Cameras flashed as he stepped into a waiting car. The driver closed the door. Marcus let his eyes rest on the skyline of the city before the sun set. Thought of Jamal's mural of the art class and the programs waiting for him at the community center. The watch he wore again on his wrist felt lighter now, its leather strapped snug against his skin. It was no longer just a gift. It was a symbol of what could happen when people chose honesty over fear. That night, social media buzzed with images of the governor's apology and footage from the precinct's security cameras. Community leaders praised the swift action. Activists urged continued vigilance against abuse of power. Marcus read the messages on his phone, each one a reminder that his voice mattered. He sat at his desk at home, the watch glowing softly under his lamp, and wrote a note to his volunteers. Thank you for your support. Let's keep moving forward together. As midnight approached, the city's lights twinkled outside his window. Marcus pressed his palm to the watch, felt the steady tick beneath his fingers, and allowed himself a hopeful smile.
Ow.
The truth had come out. Now, the real work could begin. Marcus woke before dawn the next morning, the city still wrapped in quiet. Slipped his wristwatch on, the leather strap warm against his skin. For a moment, he paused and let the gentle ticking bring back the events of the past day. He thought of the fear he had felt in the back of the patrol car of sitting alone in that holding cell, and of the relief that had followed when the truth came out. He breathed deep and rose from bed, determined to carry that relief forward into action. By mid-morning, the community center was already buzzing. Volunteers hung posters announcing a public forum on police reform, and neighbors stopped by with coffee and muffins. Jamal and the other art students gathered around a fresh blank wall, chatting excitedly about the mural they would paint. Marcus greeted each person with a genuine smile, shaking hands and hugging those who had supported him. He felt the strength of the community's care in every embrace. At 11 o'clock, the doors opened wide for the forum. Chairs filled quickly, and a crowd pressed close to the front. Community leaders, Local ministers, teachers, and families found seats. A few reporters stood at the back, with cameras resting on their shoulders. Governor Ellis arrived, his face calm but earnest. He walked quietly down the aisle until he stood beside Marcus at the front. The audience fell silent. Marcus stepped forward first, looked out at the hopeful faces. "Thank you all for coming," he began. His voice was steady. "Yesterday I faced fear and injustice, but here you are, united for change. That gives me hope." He paused, glancing at Governor Ellis. "We cannot let one bad action define our relationship with those who serve us. We must build trust through clear rules and honest dialogue." The governor raised a hand for quiet. "I stand with Marcus and with all of you," he said. His tone was warm and firm. "We will strengthen oversight of our police. We will require detailed evidence logs and clear chain of custody rules. We will expand body cameras and ensure they are always on. And we will form a civilian review board with real power to investigate complaints." He looked directly at Marcus. "These changes will start with my office and move through the legislature. I will work until daybreak to make them real." The audience erupted in applause, voices echoing through the high ceiling. Marcus felt tears in his eyes. He admired the governor's honesty, but he also felt the weight of responsibility. He spoke again. "This is a good start. We cannot stop at rules. We must build relationships. We need regular meetings where officers and residents share their stories. We need neighborhood patrols that work side by side with youth programs. If we know each other as people, fear will give way to respect." One by one, attendees stepped to the microphone to share their own stories. A teacher spoke of students afraid to walk home at night. A pastor described parishioners who felt unheard. A firefighter talked about emergency calls where officers and medics clashed. Each story landed softly, then sank in. When the final speaker, a young mother named Rosa, said, "We want safety and we want justice," her words hung in the air like a gentle promise. After 2 hours of conversation, the forum closed. Volunteers guided people to sign up for working groups focused on training, policy review, and community events. Marcus and Governor Ellis walked outside together. The sun hung low, painting the sky coral and gold. They paused at the mural wall, where Jamal and others had already sketched outlines of hands joining around a shining watch. "That looks amazing," Governor said, studying the design. "It captures unity." Jamal beamed and dipped his brush in blue paint. He began to fill in the sky behind the hands. Marcus knelt beside him, guiding his strokes gently. "It's for you," Jamal said, "to remind you of this day." Marcus smiled and placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. "And for all of us," he replied. Over the next few days, the city moved swiftly. Internal Affairs completed its report. Officers Davis and Reed faced formal charges of theft and misconduct. Their hearing drew media attention, and over 2 tense days, evidence including the gift room video and witness statements made clear their guilt. The judge found them responsible and ordered their dismissal from the department. Both faced fines and community service, and their names were entered into an engaged officers' registry as unfit for service. Marcus watched the verdict on television with a mixture of relief and solemnity. He felt no joy in their downfall. Rather, he felt vindication for the principle he believed in, that no one should be above the law. He thought of the families who would feel safer because 2 officers had been held to account. He looked down at his wristwatch and allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. That weekend, the community center held a rededication ceremony. The mural was complete, a large golden watch held by hands of many skin tones, rising against a sky of blended pastels. Underneath the words truth, unity, justice were painted in bold letters. Crowds gathered to admire it, snapping photos and praising the artists. Marcus stood at the edge, watching children point at the watch and whisper to their parents. Governor Ellis spoke again, this time with Jamal by his side. He praised the volunteers and artists, calling the mural a symbol of collaboration. He turned to Marcus. "Your leadership brought us here," he said. Marcus shook his head. "We all did it together," he answered. The crowd cheered. Marcus's eyes met Rosa's in the audience. She nodded, and he nodded back. In the days that followed, the local news carried stories of the reforms taking shape. New policies were drafted, training sessions scheduled, and community patrols began meeting with officers at the center. Marcus helped lead a workshop on communication skills for both residents and police. He found new purpose in this work, knowing that each step forward was built on the struggle he had endured. Late one evening, Marcus sat at his desk, tapped the keyboard to finish an op-ed for the city newspaper. He wrote about his experience, the betrayal he had felt when his watch was taken, and the power of truth to set things right. He spoke of unity and the ongoing work required for justice. When he clicked send, he leaned back and let out a slow exhale. He glanced at the watch on his wrist, its face glowing softly under the desk lamp. It had survived a trial that tested so many things. It was more than a timepiece now. It was a reminder that integrity matters. He thought of Jamal's mural, of community voices rising in the forum, and of the reforms already underway. The watch ticked on, steady and strong. That night, Marcus stepped onto his front porch. A light breeze rustled the leaves of the old oak tree by his walkway. He closed his eyes and felt the city's distant hum. In the quiet, he could almost hear the echo of the community's voices, saying in unison, "We stand together." He opened his eyes and smiled, touched his watch and whispered, "Onward." Then he went inside, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring.